Conversations with Jacob today, and we got an interesting episode for you. But before we get into that, I just want to plug in some social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/conversations with Jacob on YT, and on Twitter at CWJ Podcast. And you can find us on podcasting platforms like iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we're on Audible, TuneIn, just so many platforms, over 20 platforms that we're on, and you can also check out our merchandise. We got hoodies, mugs, t-shirts, tank tops, and you name it, then we probably have it. If you got a show idea or a question or a guest request, you can email the podcast at conversationswithjacob@gmail.com. And we also got a website, conversationswithjacobpodcast.weebly.com. You can check out our podcast there, check out past guests, and you can also submit a request on the contact form. Upcoming episodes, and there's been a change. June 12th was supposed to be the Spa Guy. We were supposed to do that yesterday, which was May 3rd, which I didn't know, which I had May 4th down, but apparently it was yesterday. So we're going to try to work that out. June 19th is Joshua Shea. We're talking porn addiction, which should be interesting. Our future guest is Jim Wittes. He's an author of many books. One is American Cults and God Uncensored. Then we have Larry Getter, who's Elvis's hairdresser for many years. Michael and Jay, and that's Elvis related. And Stanley Primuth, who is a 9/11 survivor. And also me and Stanley is working on something for 9/11 with another survivor. So stay tuned for that. Not sure if it will happen or not. It's just in the works. So with that being said, and joining me today is James Martin. He's considered himself a history geek and a space nerd. And he's also the member of the Worsley Paranormal Group since 2003. James, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jacob. Thanks for having me. Happy Star Wars Day.
Oh yeah, today is May 4th. Yeah. So are you a Star Wars fan?
I have to confess, I'm a Star Trek.
Oh, Star Trek.
But I watch Star Wars sometimes. It can be fun.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So do you got like a favorite I guess episode or movie?
Oh, well, my favorite Star Trek series is Star Trek Voyager, and I think in terms of Star Wars, well, I'm gonna have to say Rogue One. I thoroughly enjoyed that film, even though everyone I say that to seems to think I'm strange, but I can live with that.
Now, you're from the UK, right?
I am, yes. I'm moderating my accent for you, because if I spoke with my true accent, well, no one in the UK can understand me, so I will do my best. I had a radio interview a few weeks ago where my accent sort of came out a little bit and I had to put subtitles up, so there we go. As long as you can hear me loud and clear, that's all.
Oh, yeah, of course. Now, how did you get involved with history?
Well, we're all involved with history, but for me, it was studying at high school. I studied history. College, I studied history, and shortly after then, studied classics. Looking at the Roman Empire and all of this. It sort of, I mean, history shapes who we are today. It's not that history ever repeats itself, because, well, that would be a boring story. It's the fact that we don't learn the lessons that the people before us have made, which keeps me fascinated. There's so much history that it's a task that you can never really complete. So, yeah, it's. That's pretty much how I get involved.
All right. Now, speaking of the Roman Empire, which I don't know too much about it, but with the Roman Empire, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Roman Empire, it sort of started actually with the Roman Kingdom, in what the Romans referred to as Ab Urbe Condita, the founding of the city of Rome, somewhere in the 8th century BC, and developed then into a republic. And then by the time of, wasn't an emperor, but the person that most people have heard of, Julius Caesar, his successor, Octavian, who became Augustus, became the first emperor. And it's really with the Roman Empire that we see a lot of people focus on the empire, because littered across Europe, or most of it, are the remnants of buildings. Just the other week, I was at a Greco-Roman site with functioning aqueduct still, with huge forums, and it's still it formed part and parcel of most of our societies today. Even in fact, if you have a town council, or you have any representative body, they've probably got some of the ideas from those Romans. Really interesting group of people, exceptional engineers. To give you a rough idea, it would take, really, they had sewerage systems, they had running water, they had underfloor heating. It would take about 1800 to 2000 years later before we would have that again. To give you an idea, they were quite an advanced group.
Now I got a question for you about the Roman Empire, which you could probably say it's true or maybe it's false. But a friend I was talking to, and she brought this up, and I thought I would ask you this question. Now, with the Roman Empire and the Roman Colosseum, did they, for like criminals, did they bring them there to feed them to the lions?
I love that that question. The answer, I'm sorry to interrupt anyone who loves Hollywood films, but the answer to that is probably no. The Colosseums were not a feeding station for feral animals. I was at a amphitheatre, a Colosseum, if you will. We'll just use the word amphitheatre to keep it simple. And in those theatres, so this was in a place called Tarragona in Spain, in northern Spain. They had charioteers, they had gladiators. This idea of having animals, people being fed to the lions, no, they most certainly did in some of the theatres in the Colosseum. They most certainly did fight with animals, but it wasn't a case of it was some sort of punishment. No, the Romans had much more intriguing ways of punishing you if you committed one of the two reasons for you to be executed in Rome, one being treason and the other desertion. And the penalties for things like that were very unique. Give you a flavour of one of them. You wouldn't be sent to a Colosseum. You would be put into a bag with a monkey, a snake, and a dog. And you would join them in that bag, of which they would tie you inside it alongside some weights and throw you either into the sea or into the river to drown to death. Quite why the monkey and the snake? I'm guessing the monkey eats the snake, the dog eats the monkey, and then the dog learns a trick. Well, learns how to play dead very quickly. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Now let's talk about some paranormal. How did you get involved with the Worsley Paranormal Group?
Well, that group, it was set up back in 2003, really before a lot of the sort of paranormal groups had been formed. It's, in the United States and the UK, yes, there were paranormal groups, but they were pretty, you could name them, they weren't that numerous. So we established that well, the leader of the group, Erica Gregory, myself, her family, her son's one of my best friends, Jordan. Established that really not to make any money out of it, completely non-for-profit. Any equipment we bought ourselves, but with a view of, like a lot of other paranormal groups, to try and gain some evidence, or at least experiences of paranormal activity in the variety of old buildings that we have littered across the United Kingdom. Other people wanted to join us on those groups, usually the curators of the various places. And yeah, we've met the headlines a few times, but really my involvement with that again comes back to history. When you do a tour around an old building, see those lovely red ropes even, not robes, but red ropes that stop you from going sort of behind the scenes. Well, when you're on a paranormal investigation, there are no ropes. So if you're interested in history, getting behind the getting behind the rope and seeing what's really behind that fireplace, what's in that priest hole, was really interesting, and sort of led from there, I guess. It's been a long time since that was founded, and that 2003. I'm just looking at 20 years ago. Time flies.
Now, can you tell us about some of the experiences that you had?
Yeah, so there were a few. There were some televised events I was involved in. The In the city of York, the Roman Iberacum, there was there is a pub there called the Golden Fleece, which is reputed to be exceptionally haunted. To be honest, I went in not feeling it. I couldn't feel anything. If you go into a place, you sometimes think, oh, is it a dark, cold place? And it really wasn't until I had an oak table thrown at me. Now, oak tables can't really be lifted by one person. This thing was, you'd need at least four of me, or whatever. And this thing basically it shifted right towards me as if it was going to pin me. Another place was at Pendle Hill, which is in Lancashire. Whenever undertaking a investigation, I mean, we tried not to have psychics as best we could, although sometimes they would join. But it's always useful to try and be as not skeptical but objective as possible. So, oh, that light in the sky, is it a ghost? Is it something else? Well, no, we're near an airport, so it's more likely to be something that left from there. But you don't rule anything out. And at Pendle Hill, I cannot. Well, I would never return. It's not a building; it's a hill where the witch trials of the so-called Pendle witches began. They were tried in the nearby city of Lancaster, but on this hill where they were, well, it was in a barn. They were meant to have met in the early 1600s. I find myself in there, and we've got about 50 people, including recording crew, cameramen, riggers, things like this. And we're trying to undertake a vigil. Well, 8 people around the table, they are pretty much knocked out, feeling sick and can't sit up. And eventually, as people are leaving, then I can't be in this room. Well, it's my turn. There's barely anyone left to join in, and yeah. Oh, not just did I feel it, but we were looking to do, well, we were doing glass divination, as I remember. I'm very skeptical about this. Well, I certainly was, because it started to do a figure of 8, and at which point the glass lifted up like this midair, stopped midair, and then launched against the wall. At that point, the nausea was replaced with I can't really describe it, a spinning headache, pins and needles in places that, at the end of your nose, as if something's walking into you. It was a horrendous experience. Equally, I suppose the last one I'd mention was at Ordsall Hall, where we had a light show of orbs that you could see with your eyes. Purples, blues, oranges. It looked like falling coloured snow inside the what they call the Star Chamber, Elizabeth the First Lady of Waiting's bedroom. Basically, it's not all bad, but you do tend to remember the pretty sinister events.
Do you believe that there is like demons out there?
This is the question that often is asked the most, and I'd like to say the word demon if we can uncouple it from religious context. If we could do that, then I would say, yeah, like human beings. So, for example, followers of Islam believe in the jinn. In fact, even prior to Islam, the jinn were referenced as another species that lives on this planet with us. They were good and bad, and I tend to think that that's the case. I have to say, there was a particular event where something followed me back from an event, and it was with me for about 2 years. I used to see it standing at the bottom of my bed sometimes. I don't think that had ever been alive. I don't think it was anyone who passed. I think that was I don't know, maybe a collection of bad thoughts. I don't know. That would be the closest I'd get to a demon. We had someone called Fred Blatt. I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning his name. Now, he owns a nightclub, I'll call it that, in London. Quite a famous one. Please, if you're listening, do not go and look it up. It looks a bit like Stringfellows, but we'll just leave that there. He's the UK's only demonologist, and I've had a conversation with him, and I asked the same question, actually. Do you think really, genuinely, the demons? And out comes this notebook that looked like it had been with him all of his life, sort of yellow, and bits of paper sticking out of it. And he says, it's not just do I think that they are around with us, but I've got the names of it. And we did an investigation, and what he was explaining, at least what I could gather from him, was that they don't often reveal their names. They pretend to be something that's innocent, something that's, I'm a baby that died. And the more you talk to this baby and you open yourself up, that's when they sort of reveal. And he said something that it won't leave me, because sometimes I hear people, mediums, psychics, things like this, and I have to say there's unfortunately a lot of frauds out there, but there are some people who I genuinely believe who are gifted, who have said basically if they see something that covers their mouth and they can just see the eyes, it's usually a good indication to get out of there. Usually something what we would call demonic, maybe. If you accept demons, you have to accept angels. And I think that it would be healthier if we looked at it as good entities, bad entities, or more specifically, helpful and malevolent. I think that's where I would go with that one.
All right. Now, as we move on through these topics, my next topic is space. I was now with space, and do you think that we actually landed on the moon?
I studied astronomy, and I have to say, if I have seen live telescope footage from what was called Hubble. It's still working just about, and you can see tracks on the moon. I think that governments are capable of hiding a great many things. Genuinely, with the moon, I'm not against or opposed them having a backup plan. You know, a nice recorded Stanley Kubrick recorded set. You know, as a sort of backup if they couldn't get any footage or whatever it is. I haven't been convinced otherwise. Even down to the shadows are in the wrong direction. Well, they're not. The the moon is bathed by the sun and also by the Earth's reflection of the sun's light. The number of people involved to cover such a great conspiracy is surely more would have leaked. So unfortunately for that one, I don't have too much of an open mind because, you know, not too far away from where I'm from is a place called Jodrell Bank that is a radio telescope. And they were instrumental in broadcasting the early signals back from the moon to the United States. And you can see the trajectory of the broadcast is, you know, it's not from Earth. But that's where, I mean, what do you think, I suppose?
You know, I really don't know. You know, it's like people that says that the Earth is flat. You know, I really don't know what to think about that either.
Having just travelled quite a bit of a distance, it'd be much easier if it was flat. Just leave it there. No, it's you know, we are on. We can see other planets that are these what are called oblate spheroids. You know, we can see the way that things operate. But if you want to believe in flat planets, there are some that spin so quickly. You would look at them and you would see that they are, you know, quite thick but flat relatively. Yeah, there we go.
Right. Now, so now with space, you know, of course, there's the International Space Station up there. You know, which I've always wondered, and how did they get that big, you know, that big, I guess, object up there in space?
Well, it's a bit like what was called Skylab back in the 90s, I think 80s actually, and some of the other space labs. You don't do it all at once, you do it in very small segments. So there used to be the space shuttle. Why on earth the US government and NASA decommissioned that program, I don't know. You know, in favour of these rockets doesn't make too much sense to me, but hey, that's their decision. You would take them up in small pieces, so you'd maybe take a bit of hardware up in one mission. You know, for example, one of the big problems is trying to cool down stations like that. So you need radiators that can somehow radiate heat into space. Without them, well, you would literally be, you know, like a microwaved tin can. So they take it up in bits and pieces. And one of the other interesting sort of things now is inflatable habitats. So, you know, you just take a shell and quite literally inflate it in space. So they take it up in bits and pieces, and the construction of it was interesting. I mean, it didn't feel like this today, but there was a sense that, you know, countries were coming together. You know, you had European Union part, you had the United States. I didn't even realise Canada had a space program until they started sending parts. The Russians even. We allowed to say Russia anymore? They were sending bits and pieces, and it was, crewed by an international team, and supported. It was, it looked like an achievement of mankind finally coming together, and well, that's worked out well, hasn't it? I suppose there we are in 2023, but there we go.
Do you think that we ever will go back to the moon?
I think we're gonna have to. I have very mixed feelings about mankind going to other planets because we could do with sorting our own out first. But I think here's a phrase: the final frontier. Used to be there's a book I've just co-authored out called Uncharted, really about the discovery of the Americas. Obviously not by the people already there, but by European and Asian powers. We're a species that's nomadic, and we're also explorers. If you hear a noise somewhere, you don't just ignore it. You want to go and see what it is, or if you see something, you want to go and see what it is. And I think that is one of the reasons why we will end up exploring our solar systems very soon. The other thing is our need for, well, these things, smartphones, and people are addicted to technology and other things. Those require some exotic minerals, and we're fast running out of some of them on the Earth. We do have entire planets full of resources. There's water on the moon. Well, there's water pretty much on every planet. There's metals. Jupiter is this huge ball of essentially hydrogen and some other pretty unpleasant gases, I've got to say. There are a lot of minerals out there, and I think I think some people are beginning to think, do you know what, we should tap into that. We need them if we're going to expand technologically. Whether that's a good thing is, again, I've got a very mixed view on it, but I think that's the direction of travel.
All right, yeah. Now moving, I guess, back to history. I don't know if you have an answer for this or not, but which I've always wanted to know this, and a good friend of mine talked about it as well. Now, with Easter, can you tell us why we have a rabbit and then eggs when rabbit and an egg don't go together?
Yeah, they do, and with plum sauce. Rabbit's delicious. Anyway, essentially, Easter comes from, there's two elements to it. You have an old goddess, Aostra, who I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that, but that's what I've had for 35 years of my life. But Aostra is a pre-Christian god, one of essentially fertility. And there was the worship of Aostra to essentially bring fertility to the earth at a time where the earth has died. So there isn't, in this period, really even up until the end of the Roman Empire, the notion of it, what you guys call fall, what we call autumn, and spring. There isn't that idea. You essentially have summer and winter, death and life. And to try and usher in fertility, not just of people, but of animals and things like this, there is this entity, this god, if you will, Aostra. Well, that's where the name comes from. And that is where you find rabbits, essentially. Rabbits tend to breed around the Easter time. The chocolate eggs, well, that's relatively recent invention from chocolate companies to sell things. But genuinely, eggs, again, a symbol of fertility, not just in humans, but also with some animals. Um, its date is interesting as well. So currently writing my next book around the Templars, and there is an obsession by the Knights Templar and others for getting the date of Easter correctly. But these dates move around in history. So, for example, Jesus, sorry to say this, perhaps not born on Christmas Day, and in fact, really up until the mid 1700s, it was quite common for Jesus to have been born in May. It just changed, and it's a movable feast, pardon the pun. But what isn't a movable feast is Passover. And so you find that with the dating of Easter, you can tell how old the celebration is, sort of pagan, if you will, celebration is, because it's not based upon a Terran calendar, an Earth calendar. It is based upon where the moon is. It's a lunar event. And so if you know where the moon is in the sky at a particular time, then that's when the celebration of not just Passover, but of course of Easter lies.
All right. So people that says that Jesus was born on Christmas kind of has that date wrong then.
Yeah, well, here's the other slight problems as well. We're using a calendar that is, the Gregorian calendar. If you go back prior to Pope Gregory, I think he's around in the 14th century. If you go prior to that, there was the Julian calendar. And at that point, there's about 4 days difference. Now, I can tell you someone who was born on the 25th of December.
Yeah, sure.
Who, went into a cave to find a bull, who had sacred knowledge, eternal knowledge, in fact. And this person, born of a virgin, slaughtered the bull, bathed in its blood to obtain all of the knowledge of nature, the earth, and all that is to know. Who had disciples too, and who, the followers of this person, drank wine, ate bread, and did all of this. If you think I'm talking about Jesus Christ, I'm not. I'm talking about someone called Mithras. So we should really be saying on the 25th of December, Mithras's birthday, Happy Mithras. There are a lot of similarities between the date of Jesus's birth and Mithras, and others as well. Let's be clear on this. Certainly a lot of Pharaonic, from the Egyptian period. You've got the Horus child. It's a very weak argument, but you've got to bear in mind at the time of Christ, there's lots of different ideas, and even after Christ, I do think there was a historical Jesus, by the way, but afterwards, his followers have different viewpoints and all of this. But it was relatively settled for some time around about May. It only moves really to Christmas, as we would understand it. There's not a ecumenical council. There's not a pope who says on this day. It's just things that happen gradually over time. Well, my person was born then, so perhaps he was born then. If you think about the story itself, again, you've got, there's no room at the inn but the stable, and there's depictions of lambs, Agnus Dei, so to speak, newborn livestock and all of that. Well, animals don't give birth at Christmas in the winter. They give birth towards Easter. So it's, the date has moved, and don't just listen to what I have to say. Go and have a look up. The date has moved. And it'd be helpful for me if it would move again, because I'm tired of getting 2 presents, birthday and Christmas. So there you go.
All right. Now, I've seen somewhere online. I think it came. I think I've seen an article on a site that you said that Columbus may not have been the first one to come to America.
Just written a book about this. I should say, edited, added, and then co-authored with the late Tim Wallace Murphy. Yeah, almost certainly Christopher Columbus. In 1492, Columbus discovered nothing new. There we go. And it's not a conspiracy theory. There's far too much evidence for that. For example, if you were to look up a site called L'Anse-Meadow, L'Anse space AUX space meadow, as in like a field. You'll be taken to a UNESCO World Heritage Site in northern Newfoundland, Canada, which was a Norse or Viking ship repair facility. So if they're repairing ships, they called that area Markland, a wooded place. They also had another place further north called Helluland, the stony place, so perhaps Baffin Island, as we would understand it. Then a place to the south of Markland called Vinland, meaning something like the fertile place, which is probably New England. You don't need to listen to me on that. A very basic Wikipedia search. Don't get your information from Wikipedia all the time, but you'll be able to see there. So what exactly did Columbus discover? There's certainly some idea that he took a map, and secondly, he never stepped foot in the continental United States or Mexico or Canada. He stepped foot on the island of Hispaniola. If anything, he discovered the Caribbean. But again, he didn't. He didn't discover anything, really. What he did is open up the doors for European powers to finally place a land claim. And we know that they did that because, the northern part of the continent of America speaks English, the southern Spanish. And in South America, on the eastern part, they speak Portuguese. If you don't want to agree with me, that's fine. By the way, people don't want to agree with each other. You're not Hitler for disagreeing. Disagreeing's how we learn. But I'm just saying, what happened after Columbus was the colonies, and then, you guys declared independence. There was some spat, wasn't there? You didn't like King George. Something happened. You know what I mean? We don't talk about that, do we? But prior to Columbus, no, the Norse were there. The Irish, in fact, were there were monks in Greenland, perhaps further afield. As early as the 600s, the Irish were fishing off the coast of Newfoundland. There's Roman shipwrecks in Rio de Janeiro. Amphorae from Roman galleys have been found. There's depictions of Chinese vessels arriving on the western coast of what we call the United States and Canada today. We have this strange enigma of Egyptians with over 1,000 carvings of maize, only found in the continental Americas. And if we need to jump into it, tobacco leaves found in the digestional tracts of hundreds of mummies, including Ramses II of Ramses the Great. Not only that, but cocaine.
Wow.
So, the pharaohs were having a really good party, it seems. I don't know how much more evidence needs to be provided, and like I say, if you're interested in that topic, jump onto Google, Uncharted. You can type my name, James Martin, or Uncharted and Tim Wallace Murphy. And if you want to join ancestors in the way that we used to communicate, not in writing but audibly through speaking, you can also go onto Audible. There is an audiobook version of Uncharted 2.
Now, now the next question is: do you think that the pyramids was built by hand, or do you think like something else? I guess something else did it.
Um, what I'm convinced is there used to be a saying when I was studying classics that the pyramids were built by the whip. I'm sorry, it's just not true. Our society looks back and assumes that the previous generation and the previous society were somehow more stupid than our own. And we do that because if we said, well, actually, we're much more inferior than the last generation, then people would revolt against their government. So we say, well, we can't explain any of this. But so it must have been the whip. That's right, slaves, and there's no evidence at all. In fact, so much evidence to the contrary. Before I answer that directly, whatever, however, they were built. Just remember the bigger question, which is with so many of these sites, not just the pyramids, some of the caves where you have cave paintings. I've been into several 6-kilometer walks, so translate that 4 miles of walking before you get to see these. And we don't know how they got into the caves. These are artificial openings. Yeah. If you believe in cavemen, people just living in a cave, well, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm a time traveler and I'm just going to go back to the cave and see the caveman, who would have to be carrying a torch because it's quite, it's dark. And what I would do then is go, blow out the torch, then you've got a dead caveman. So, no, we're not talking about people living in caves. And again, think about the pyramids. For me, a much bigger mystery is how the hell did they light it in there? There's not really much evidence of any scorching, and certainly in none of the caves, there's no evidence of, any burning, any soot or anything like that. So how did they light it? They did. They must have. So there's a big mystery for us. How did they go about doing that? Was it with mirrors? Was it, we just don't know. And that really is the notion with my proper answer for the pyramids is we don't know. I'm not against the critics from space building. It's a bit unusual for them to travel, from Zeta Reticuli or somewhere like this. They've built technology to traverse space and time, and they can travel these unfathomable distances to put a few stones in a triangle. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, it feels much more human, which is more exciting, I think, because they clearly were using technology. We can't replicate the pyramids today. Thank God people have tried. They had a method of building, I think, that was much more advanced than ours. Maybe using, there's a bit of work at the minute on this, is in research using sound. So using sound, which you can use to clean cavities, for example. We know if you've ever come across the place called Rosslyn Chapel. If you go into Rosslyn Chapel just outside of Edinburgh, in the village of Rosslyn, pretty famous if you've ever watched the Da Vinci Code. When you go into the chapel there, turn left, look up, head over to what's called the altar. I'm sorry, it really isn't. But look up and you've got these strange cubes. These cubes have markings on them. And we now understand that they are what are called psionic. In other words, they're depictions of the way sound works. If you were to get a rubber sheet, say, and pour some sand on it, and then put that rubber sheet over a speaker, different frequencies form different patterns. Fascinating to watch, and it's believed that this is, when you put them together, there's actually a song that comes out of it. Now, if they can move sand, if you have a little bit more power to it, you can move. We know this. If you can get something to vibrate, it's much easier to push. So I wonder if if they had a method like that to move things. I think I think when we go, let's go back in time. You've got some buildings that are, we couldn't make them today. The Great Pyramid is 1/3 of 1 degree off pointing true north. Jacob, I said, you build me a house and I need it to be 1/3 of 1 degree off true north. What your first question is, why? What's the point? But they did, and it seems they were trying to marry the heavens, and Graham Hancock and John Anthony West, of course, Robert Bavalik, I shouldn't forget him. I've done some excellent work on that, looking at the link to Orion and the constellation of Leo with the Sphinx, and it seems that that's what they are doing. Throw you a question. What if they were trying to point out something in the heavens that we should be looking at?
That's a good question, yeah.
We have stone circles all over the north of England and Brittany in western France. And stone circles, you'll have heard of Stonehenge. By the way, Stonehenge was built in the 1920s. True story. The Victorians put it up. A bit of it fell down. It's a recent creation. Oh, the rocks have been there for a while, but it's certainly been tampered with by us. If I were to ask you to go into a really flat area, I think some of the central states of the US, where you have just this flat land. I'm thinking of maybe Iowa or somewhere like that. Iowa's flat, right?
I suppose, I don't know.
From memory, anyway. If you live in Iowa, don't shout at me, but just try and imagine somewhere. All right, don't shout at me. I've just mentioned your state, so there you go. But imagine you're on a really flat piece of land. There's no mountains around. And I say, right, okay, Jacob, lie down. Here's some paper and a pencil. What I want you to do is draw the sky. The only shape you could draw is a circle. Now, when you look at stone circles and circular objects and things like that, you are almost always looking at an observatory. And I don't mean with a telescope, I mean people are observing what's going on in the heavens. We think today we're so advanced. Well, I could ask you to go outside this evening, and even if it was a clear night, I could ask you to look at the sky. And if you live in a city or a town, you're not going to see anything. You might see a few things. It will be completely obscured by light pollution. And if I asked you to look at Ursa Major or something like this, Vega or something, the chances of you, of anyone doing the following, yes, well, I'll get my almanac out, I'll have a look and I'll try and plot it and all of this, it's nil really. What you'll do is you'll get your phone out and download an app and point it and go, aha, it's somewhere around there. Well, to our ancestors, they didn't have towns and cities spoiled with light pollution. They didn't have phones or TV or distractions. There was no internet really. And they became exceptionally familiar with nature. You imagine yourself, and it is dark, really dark. There's, most people can't afford candles. So again, if you've been watching the Hollywood films with candles everywhere and flaming arrows, they go out on the way down. Anyway, all of this stuff, it's not like that. For most people, it was very dark. And so you hear a twig snap outside. You're alert, you're aware of it. You see something that's in the heavens that's not been there before. You record it. What is this? Our ancestors' familiarity with the heavens is beyond. For us to see the sky, you asked me about the moon landings, we have to send satellites. We have to send our eyes out of this planet for us to be able to see. That wasn't the case for our ancestors. They were familiar with everything, and perhaps some of these buildings are sort of saying, you should be watching up there, a little reminder to us.
So do you believe that, that we're kind of at the end of times, that something's going to happen?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. Me and my research partner, Renee Barnett, she was doing a TV sort of program a few weeks ago, and we were talking after that event, and something that keeps coming up is, end of times. There's a big event coming, and there is. Our species has much more in common than what divides us, and we can't see it because one group of people say don't like the other group of people, the other group of people say the same, and you've got the internet and everything's getting much more extreme. We're missing the big picture. We're missing the fact that there are places on this earth that haven't had water for 8 years. In Australia, for example, entire towns in the centre of Australia are dying. There is no more water. There is no more land. There are no animals to feed. Our reefs are bleached. Whether we like it or not, whether you have a view on whatever's going on with our global temperatures, whatever you think about that, I'm not interested in the process. I have my views on that. I am interested in the results. Our planet is fine, by the way. Anyone who says that the Earth's going to end, no. Earth's fine. It's been around for 4.8 billion years, less or slightly longer. We're a surface nuisance to it. It's not the Earth going anywhere, it's us. So if we haven't killed ourselves with warfare, the thing that's coming next is the water wars. When all those glaciers in the Himalayas melt, 2/3 of the Earth's population who are reliant on those rivers are going to be very thirsty very quickly, and a lot of those countries have nukes. So if we haven't eradicated ourselves through that, there might even be something from above. A number of people, as I say, in this last month, who have been, these people that you either watch, listen to, speak to, whatever. I mean, for me, it was, Linda Moulton Howe. She effectively broke down about, some horrendous event that's coming up, and it's strange. It just seems to be the thing that people who investigate that side of the paranormal, maybe, or that side of things, keep on saying there's something coming from the heavens that we should be worried about. That people have warned about for some time. I don't know. When I see it, it'll probably be too late. There's nothing I can do about it. If there is an alien armada, I doubt it, by the way, but if there is, I can't do anything about it. If I sit here and worry about something that may or may not happen, I'm going to miss the beauty of the planet that we live on, and the beauty of the people that we talk to.
Absolutely. Now, I watched a video last night. I don't know how true it is. They say it's going to happen in May. Well, of course, by the time this goes up, I'm sure it should already had happened. I was seeing a video that's saying that the government is working on a one world government. They're trying to get out of the WHO, which is the World Health Organization. So have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have, and well, there's two things, and again, don't hate me for saying this, anyone. We're all just sharing our views on this strange journey we're on. I have two thoughts about it. One world government could be an exceptionally brilliant thing if it was done the right way, of course. Now, I don't know about presidents of Earth or anything like that, but it could work. It could work if it was democratic, clean, removed from corporate interests and what we call backhanders, brown paper envelopes, corruptions and bribes. It could work, and it could bring us together, and it could allow us to focus on the threats that are out there and down here. Or someone like Hitler takes over and we're all screwed. In which case, that's the argument against. Now, I'm not on the fence. I would like to think one day we could get over our own prejudices and, borders were just drawn on maps by Victorians and other people. A baby knows not where it's born kind of thing. It might be an idea one day, if we ever get there, for us all to be, what country are you from? Earth. Could be. We're not there yet, and I can't see it happening in my lifetime. So, and having seen some of the sort of people that are getting into government, I wouldn't be remotely confident for them to, run a party in a brewery kind of thing. So, what are they doing for me? This doesn't apply in the UK, firstly. We have the European Union, a collection of states and things that Britain stupidly left. But hey, in the United States has traditionally tried to go it alone. There are some other ideas around sort of takeovers, and I think this notion of one world government, and the World Health Organization and a lot of this. I wonder what it is that if this was happening. I wonder what the ultimate plan is. What the notion is. And I haven't heard too much about this, by the way. So
according to the video that I saw with the one world government, it's going to be this one person, I forgot what his name is, that they can push vaccines and do like lockdowns and treatments, kind of without our permission.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, look, if it was anything like in the UK, most people just ignored lockdowns. That would be step one. The problem you guys have got is the police seem to be armed like the army. So I wouldn't want to. I'm not sure what I would do there. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting point. I'm not sure. I mean, we know that with vaccines there are always negative reactions to it, and I do know that people have lost their lives having been vaccinated. Equally, I have to get, just for balance, this is all, there are other arguments, like, for example, where's polio today? Pretty much eradicated in smallpox. These vaccines could cause problems. I mean, I've had COVID, for example, after I've had my vaccinations. due to the nature of my job, if I wanted to carry on working, I had to travel. So I have to have my vaccinations. Not really much of a choice. Well, I did have a choice. It was a choice to be able to put food on the table or not. That was the way for it. I don't know. Could these lead to more exciting things? I don't know. They could. You know, looking at the process, there's no reason why they couldn't cure cancer. My big suspicion is that Big Pharma would step in and say no, because we can make more money out of it. I don't trust for a minute. Sorry to be a little bit political. I do not trust whatsoever any of these big pharma companies that are there to make money out of people's ill health. For me, that's abhorrent. And I don't want to know the sorts of stuff that they would do to people to get an extra dime. Let's talk about Tuskegee and these people in government who accept the brown paper envelope, and we'll just hurry this through. You guys in the States, we're well aware of it in Europe. Have experimented. There's Tuskegee experiments on your own people. It concerns us all in Europe because, here you've got a country that declared its independence on enlightened values, with now a government that if you reveal, if you leak, if you whistleblow that the government's breaking the law, it's not the government that ends up in court. It's the person who's whistleblown who ends up in prison. That for me doesn't seem like it's the right way around. But that's for me. I'm from Britain. I live in France. Of course, I've got an opinion, but it's not me who has to live it. Now it's you guys. I just say with everything, if you come from a perspective where you know that there is much more that we have in common than divides us, if you start there, you're not going to go wrong. The truth will liberate you. First, it'll piss you off, kind of idea. But as for me, well, it's Star Wars Day, and I don't know. Have me back on if you want in June. We can see whether or not in anything happened in May.
Absolutely. Well, James, before I let you go, before we end this episode, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So it's Uncharted, and what it does is, the approach is, we're not here to educate you. We're here to provoke you, and provoke you into thought. There will be things in that book that will make you think about things. It's heavily sourced. What we've done is our best to provide evidence of pre-Columbian transatlantic voyages. Now, try saying that after a few vodkas. Not going to work, or a few beers for that matter. But what we were talking about is sort of America before Columbus. And we have gone back as far as we can. I should explain, Tim Wallace-Murphy, very much a father-like figure. I ended up looking after him for the last few years of his life. We shared a mutual interest in this topic, amongst others. And he wrote this in 2014 and explained that essentially, it produced a manuscript in 2014 and essentially just stalled. He had other projects, his health was failing. And it's about 2018, we sat outside a coffee shop and was talking about this book, and I said, I'm happy to edit it if you want me to, make it readable. And as I was going through that process, sort of emails were exchanging, and I just called him and said, Tim, I think I need to add a chapter. In fact, there was a translation of the Kensington Runestone, and if you're familiar with that, and it really, I can read runes, and it didn't quite work, so I said, oh, that needs changed, and actually this needs added, and eventually, before you know it, as Tim Health's failing, I'm sort of adding every now and again, and just before he died, he said, finish it, and that's really where it is. So it covers a length of time from around about 8000 BC, right the way up to 1492. Looking at various cultures who have said, we were there first. Look to see if there's any evidence for it. And crucially, answering in the final 2-3 chapters whether or not the Templars ended up in the Americas. And, well, I won't spoil the conclusion for you. But I'm presently writing a trilogy which is documenting the rise of the Knights Templar, which is called Order of Magnitude. The downfall of the Knights Templar, where did they go? What happened to them? Which is called Out of Order. And then impact today. Why do we keep going on about the Knights Templar? What's all that about? Which is called Last Orders. So they will be finished. The first one will be finished by the end of this year, second by the end of next, and the third by the end of that. So lots of work.
Well, there you go. All right. Which we've reached the end of the episode, which I hope to get you back on soon because there's more I want to talk about.
Jacob, I just want to say, if anyone wants to get in touch or anything like that, the website for you to visit is www.newrennies.org. So that's NEWRENNIES.org.
All right, there you go. All right, James, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. That's it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week right here on the podcast. That's June 12th at 1 o'clock, and we'll see what happens with that one. So until then, be safe, God bless, and we'll catch you in the next episode.